It's only got 11 single ignitions in range 1. Range 1, you get literally from hitting the red line going slightly downhill, even just a slight gradient, it will hit range 1. So this car has been super looked after by its previous owners. 997 sort of surpasses the 991 in that sort of added layer of complexity. You have to work a bit harder to get it to drive fast and drive it well, so it gives you more of a full experience. Hi, this is Raj from MR Sportscars. In this episode of Diary of a Porsche Specialist, I'm going to be talking about the two generations that I mainly focus on in terms of 911s. The 997 Gen 2, which was made between 2009 2012, and the 991 series Gen 1, which was made between 2012 and 2015. I have done a similar comparison before, but in that episode I used a 4S 997 Gen 2 and an S, a Carrera S on the 991 series. So this time I've actually got two 4Ss, so I'm going to be comparing like with like, driving the cars as well as talking about their physical differences, where things have changed, which things are better on the Gen 2 997, which things are better on the Gen 1 991. So that's what the premises of this video is. Now immediately you can see the colours are, I've deliberately picked these two cars because of their colour and this beautiful sunny day. So this is Aqua Blue Metallic. This is a very sort of desirable colour in the 997 Gen 2 era. Looks stunning on Caymans, Boxsters and the 911s of that time. And then this is essentially what it was replaced with, Sapphire Blue Metallic, which again looks very good on these 991s particularly. And yeah, these are two of my favourite. I mean, I love blues, metallic blues, and these are by far, they really make the car stand out. Just the colour alone, it doesn't matter about the spec, it doesn't matter about what equipment's fitted. That colour is enough to make these cars special. Now these cars do happen to be very well spec'd, and they're actually a good example of showing you some of the options that people could fit from the factory. So I'll run through all of those bits now. So firstly, looking at the cars, you can see, let me come from a few different angles first, so you can see how they compare shape-wise. I mean, it may not be very apparent in the video, but the 991 is significantly bigger. It's from memory, the length of the car is 4 centimeters longer, but the wheelbase is actually 10 centimeters longer. So they've actually made the wheels tuck more into the corners than the previous generation 997. They've also made the wheels bigger, so again that gives it the impression of being a much bigger car, because it's got 20-inch wheels, whereas that's got 19s. Headlight shape. There's a definite curve, a more pronounced roundness to it. Still got that same sort of oval shape. And then looking at the Gen 2 997, it's much flatter, but it still has that oval shape. They've made the light a lot bigger on the 991. This one, interestingly, has got the optional PDLS Porsche Dynamic Lighting System lights. The later lights are actually the standard lights for this car. They're the bi-xenon. These could be spec with PDLS as well, but this one hasn't got that option. Fuel cap's in the same place, so look, there it is on that arch. Again, they've made that bigger. Now this car's got a very nice front bumper. It's the Sport Design Aero Kit front bumper, fitted to GTS. It also has Sport Design mirrors, and it has the sunroof as well. So the sunroof option on these also was more special. Initially there was an option for a metal sunroof, not glass, And the Carrera I had in the last review I did like this had the metal opening sunroof. This one has the full glass, so it's in a colour other than black. It's a contrast as well. So you've got the blue, then you've got the piano black plastic here, then glass, then piano black plastic, I think, yeah. Or is that glass? No, that's piano black plastic. So this is the only bit that sort of you can see through. This car wasn't spec'd with the sunroof. I think it was a no-cost option, but not many people spec'd it actually, and I'm a bit surprised by that. But it was quite a small sunroof opening in there. This one's got the rear wiper. This one could be spec'd with a rear wiper, but hasn't been. Now at the back, you've got, I mean, there's 5 years difference between these two, and you can kind of tell that there's a big age difference just in the look of things. So that they made the lights slimmer. They've both got LED rear lights and daylight running lights at the front, but they really did sort of, I don't know, exaggerate the styling a little bit when they produced the 991. They made it more of a GT, sort of like larger car, more imposing on the road. The 997 is still sort of very similar to a 993, I'd say, in terms of its proportions and look. So there's, both are great cars. They have modern features, and I'll run through those, but the people who like the older car styling but want modern tech go for the 997 Gen 2, and they've still got value and they've still got desirability. The ones that want up-to-date tech, performance, looks, they go for the 991 Gen 1. Later cars have some issues with their 3-litre turbos. This is a normally aspirated engine, 3.8. It's actually the same basis of engine in both, same PDK box in both, but this one has 400 horsepower, this one has 385. Not a huge difference, but the way that they've mapped this one makes it feel very different on the road, and you'll see that in the drive when I do that. The other nice feature of this one, so the 4S's, all the four-wheel drive models of this one have that rear light bar, of the Carreras I mean, and the Targas, and obviously the convertibles as well. Same with this one, they have that rear, that's a reflector, this is an LED. So if I get the key, I think I'll be able to light it up. If I turn the lights on. See, there you go, that's lit up now. So it's an LED bar, whereas this one doesn't, it's just the LED tail lights that light up. Let me turn it up. There we go, so they're lit up now. They don't actually flicker, it's just the frame rate of the video device I'm using is bringing that up, because it sort of clashes, not in time. So there we go. So that's a bit more theatrical at the back. In terms of wheels, so as I said, these are 20-inch wheels. These are the 911 Turbo 3 wheels, diamond cut edge, and then with a factory option of having the insides of the spokes and insides of the wheels painted in gloss black. It also has tyre pressure monitoring, and then those valves were also spec'd with them being in black, so they don't stick out being silver. These are the 19-inch optional sport design wheels, which are great design. Again, they were available on the Cayman, Boxster and 911. They were finished in just standard silver, metallic silver. So, but you can see there's a big difference in the size. They're 305 width. I think these are 29. No, they're both 305 width. So they're both very wide tyres. So there's that one, and there's that one. But obviously that's an inch bigger. Both have got the switchable sports exhaust. On the 997 Gen 2 it has this silver aluminium brushed effect. Then it has the stainless steel pipes there. With this one you can't really tell from the outside that it's got the switchable sports exhaust, because that looks exactly the same as a car without sports exhaust. Badging as well, they added the Porsche, then the Carrera 4S. Here it just says Carrera 4S. At the back also, The engine bay is very different. See, in the 997 Gen 2, you can see, maybe not very well, but you can see the majority of the components above the engine. So you can see the intake, you can see the engine mounts, coolant tank, you can top up the oil there, power steering there. So everything is still accessible, cleanable, all that stuff. You've got your fan there as also for the engine bay, and then whereas in the 991, I mean, this is all you see. Literally 2 engine fans, an intake, and then the 2 top-ups for oil and coolant. So very minimal amount of sort of interaction the owner has with that car compared to what you can have with this car. In fact, both, I mean, it's funny though, because this car, when you get it serviced, the Gen 2s in particular, to do the spark plug change, you have to remove the rear bumper. There's no way of getting to all the spark plugs. There may be a special tool now, I guess, that allows it, but the procedure with Porsche is to remove the rear bumper. That goes without saying with this car. Everything that all has to come off to access the engine. So it's quite a intensive job to service these cars, particularly the 991s, and that's why the cost is slightly higher. So that's something to bear in mind. Let me just show you the keys quickly. So yeah, they updated the key design. So this is a 997 Gen 2, which was an update on this shape. The Gen 1s had a grey with a darker, sort of almost black centre, but they were very, the plastic actually broke down over time. They improved the look of the key by making it into the shape of a car. You still insert it, and in fact there is still a key, which is in this section here. You pull that out and it's got a blade, so if you need to open the car when the battery's flat or something, you've still got a blade. And the buttons, they've changed the design. If it was a Targa or a convertible, it would have an additional button there. So they've left the space for it. But this is a much more comfortable key to have in your hand, in your pocket. So that's just a subtle difference between the two. Spoilers are different as well, obviously because of the styling of the rear of the car. So there's the rear spoiler, the Gen 2, 997. So there we go. So what do you think about those? I think I actually prefer the look of this one because it's again a bit more classic. This one is a bit more over the top, I'd say, but they both look good. I like them both, but I don't know, I tend to side with the classic styling 911, so this one for me, but this is a whole different ball game. It looks more of an aero wing, whereas that one is more sort of functional. So they've definitely made it more of a feature styling wise, I feel, with the later car. Brakes I think are a similar size. So compare that one with that one. Yeah, I think they are the same size. They might have a slightly different part number. Then if I show you the front boot, you can compare those. I think they made the 991 bigger and deeper because on the four-wheel drive Carrera 4S, they put all of the tools, so they put all of the tools under here, so down there, so that kind of takes up a little bit of space. In this one, all of the tools are below, are just the sides, so they've tucked it, so they've given you more space in there, and it looks about the same size aperture from looking at the two, but I think this one's probably still a little bit bigger. To access things like brake fluid, you've got this one here, and the battery's under there. On this one, it's this whole panel lifts up, and there's brake fluid you can see sort of sticking out there, and then you've got the battery behind there. Screen wash there in the corner, and screen wash there in the corner as well. Now I'll start looking at the inside of them. So this car has the hardback sport seats. So it has the plastic backs. So these were known as just the sport seats in this generation. So if you could see a 997 Gen 2 and it says it has sport seats, it should have these plastic back seats. They all come with rear seats as well. This car's been spec'd with silver seat belts. They have an Alcantara roof lining. This car's actually got two-tone leather, and I've done a separate buying video of this car. This car I've actually had twice before, sold to two different owners, and I've now got it for a third time. Two-tone leather, so stone grey and extended black leather. The door entry guards are optional stainless steel, and you can see that that Carrera 4S model designation lights up, which is really nice at night. Makes it even more welcoming. And then this whole area here, maybe the light's not great here. This is quite low, and I'm making a point of that because when I show you the 991, you'll see why. There's quite a big difference in this centre console. It's quite narrow as well. Has the PDK 7-speed there, ZF box, and it has a strip for all of the sort of like performance car related, chassis related options. So Sport Plus, PASM, switchable sports exhaust, spoiler, and you can turn the traction control off. This car was spec'd with PASM from standard because it was the S models were in this generation, and it's got Sport Chrono Package Plus, so it has the stopwatch as well as those Sport and Sport Plus. Then it has the air conditioning module, which is a single zone. That's all you could get in the 997 Gen 2s, is one zone, set the temperature, set the fan speed, or leave it in auto, and then it will determine what fans, where to put them based on the temperature you set. Then this car has the optional heated seats. You could actually have cooled seats as well, so there'd be an additional button there, and these would be shifted in. But this car has the and that's a two-stage system, and then it has the PCM as well. So this has touchscreen capability, it's got a 3D map, it's got phone connectivity as well via Bluetooth. You've also got a SIM card slot, and then it has just an AM FM. You could spec this one with a 6 CD changer, which this one has, which is really lovely. And this car's got Bose as well, so it has a subwoofer behind the rear seats. Cup holders are here. And then up here you could have things like Garage Link, so it would be these two buttons here. You've got, as standard, lit up visors with little bulbs there. Steering wheel is the multi-function steering wheel with the buttons for the PCM. It has cruise control as well, which is that extra stalk there, and it also has steering wheel heating, which that just came up on the dash, which is a little button here. So that was another optional extra. You couldn't have auto lights. So that covers this car, and it is a very comfortable place to be. I mean, it still feels high quality and sort of well put together as a car to drive and live with. Everything works as it should. The switchgear doesn't sort of break down with time. It also has audio wired connections for your audio. 901 updated that quite a bit, which I'll show you now. So, stepping into the 991. So the seats, actually, let's have a look at these. These are, now the confusing thing is that the standard seats, i.e. the comfort seats that would have been in 997 Gen 2, in this car they're called the sport seats. And if you had the hardback ones, they were called Sport Seats Plus. These have been upgraded though, so these are the 14-way full electric sport seats. So they have lumbar support, which is this function here, which inflates cushions, 3 levels of cushion there. Fully electric back, up and down, independently front and rear. And then you have this section here which expands out to support the backs of your knees. When you get this seat, also it comes as a package with the memory seats. So you get the memories that are stored on the keys, and also 2 extra settings for saving exactly the position of that seat, including the lumbar support handily. It stores also the position of the mirrors, which are fully electric. These sport design ones actually do not rotate in, they're fixed. The standard mirrors, they do fold in, and you could actually have an extra option here, which is a button to fold them in, and when you lock it, they fold in as well. So that's another useful thing if you've got a narrow parking space, you park on a street and you want them folded in. These ones, you can't do that. This car's also got the electric steering column, so this adjusts electrically, and as a result it means that it will save the position of that steering wheel, like how far out it is, as well as up and down on those memories, which is really nice as well. And then another benefit of those seats and that whole thing is a function called easy entry and exit. So basically, when you turn the engine off, take the key out, it will move the seat back for you, it will lift the steering column, so you can get out through in narrow spaces through more, because if the seat's further back you can actually get in and out a lot easier. And then when you put the key back in, you turn the key to the first position on the ignition, it will then move the steering wheel and the seat back to where it was. So a really lovely feature that. This has got the standard door entry guards. Just says Carrera C4S in aluminium or steel, I don't know which, and then black plastic. This car, it looks like black seatbelts, but they're not. They're actually called yachting blue, so they're a dark navy blue, again to sort of match this blue theme on the car. It has auto lights, so there's an auto position, and it also has here lovely carbon trim all the way along. Has Bose, so the Bose is there rather than sort of up here. All the controls for the mirrors and stuff are there, which you've seen. Cup holders are in a similar position, so they're just here. They open out in the same way, but again that's the optional carbon trim here, and we've also got carbon trim here. Now this centre console comes up at an angle, and it's wider as well. So when you sit in the car, you feel much more, I don't know, integrated with the car. That's probably a good word for it. All the chassis and performance related options are here. The maximum you can have on this car was 7 buttons, so Sport, Sport Plus, PASM, traction control off, spoiler up and down, sports exhaust. So they're the same as the 6 in the 997 Gen 2, but then you have an additional one which is start stop, and that's one of the technologies they introduced with this car, and consequently this car, with its slightly greener map, even though it's got more power, it's a greener map on the ECU, and with start stop, this car is only, I think, £330 a year tax, which is a high amount. But then the 997 Gen 2 is 500. I think it's £585 at the moment for the same 12 months. Even though they've got the same engine, that one's got less power. Due to those extra technologies, this car is £200 cheaper for being newer, more powerful, more responsive. It's just one of those things where they changed legislation and Porsche took advantage of that, and consequently the end user saves money. Then if the car has a panoramic roof or it's a convertible, all the controls are there. So that's to open it, so I'll do that now. And then this one allows you to do a tilt function, and this one is an electric blind. Oh, interesting. Wow, you can sort of, yeah, still open it a little bit, so it has an electric blind as well, and that lets in quite a lot of light. The PCM is touchscreen exactly like the other one. They've updated the graphics a bit. It's still got Bluetooth, it's still got the SIM card there, and it has wired connections here, so USB and a wired connection there, which is great. This car has the heated seats, but in this edition of 991s they brought in 3-stage heating rather than 2. Again, this could have heated and cool seats, in which case this button would be split in half and there'd be 2 icons, one for heating, one for cooling. And then with this car, it could also be spec with 2-zone climate control. So if I take that off, you can have different temperature for left and right. I'm not sure how effective the difference would be, to be honest, because it is essentially a small 4-seater, but there is a possibility to do that. It's quite nice. Things are, if you don't want the map on, you can still have a compass on, well, you can't have that on the other car. And you can also have, this car's spec with a DAB. It's also spec'd with Bluetooth audio streaming as well. So that's one feature that the older car you couldn't get. And then it's got Sport Chrono Package Plus. This dial's been spec'd specifically in white. Normally it's in black, so that's an optional extra. So essentially, spec wise, they're very similar, these two cars. And then you've got cruise control on this side, and this wheel was actually specable in the 997 Gen 2 as well for the PDK box, which has got, like, the selector's got carbon here. Maybe my video is not showing it because of the sunlight coming in, but it's got an extra little carbon panel there rather than just being all leather. This steering wheel could be spec'd in both cars. They didn't change the design of this, and this one shows you Sport Plus there. When you press them here, it shows you there. The dial design is very similar, but this one is now an LCD panel, which with an extra stalk here if you've got this steering wheel. Otherwise there'll be controls here. You can change what is viewable by sort of moving this up and down. And if you've got options like the tyre pressure monitoring, there's the live view. If it's a 4-wheel drive, it will have this display as well. If it's got Sport Chrono, it will have this, and it will have this as well, the G-force meter, showing you maximum Gs, but also your current Gs as well. And then this one, you can actually change what you see there. So you can also see the oil measurement. Obviously, it's not warm enough to do that. And you can see the service interval. The other one, you can see the service interval as well, but it's just one service interval. This has 3, so it has the major service when that's due, the minor service, and then when the next oil change is due as well. This car was actually spec with garage links, so it has there 1, 2 and 3, so you can store 3 devices like a gate, a garage door, and something else. And this car was spec with the interior light option, so it has these lit up. From standard, these weren't actually lit up, so it's a bit mad, but they sort of made you pay for even sun visors that light up. The rear seats, I think, have more room in this car with more leg room. They also have ISO fix points, which the 997 Gen 2 didn't. And there's 2 clips at the back there for clipping in luggage, so just there as well, so you can securely attach luggage. So yeah, I mean, this feels, it also has Carrera 4S here on this particular car. That isn't standard, that is an option. So these two cars, I mean, immediately when you get in them, they feel different. This one feels, I don't know, more, you feel more cocooned, if that's the word. It feels more up to date, more modern. The technology is there. That step up in this car versus the 997 Gen 2. I think you feel it's a bigger car, because when you look over, these wings are a lot. They stick out a lot more. You can sit low. I feel like you can sit lower down in this car. So that's all of the bits I'm going to talk about without driving the car. So I'm going to now get in and drive them both. I'm heading out in the 997 Gen 2 Carrera 4S. It's starting to, I mean, this is a 2009, so this is over 12 years old now. It really doesn't feel it. It feels sort of like taut, and doesn't overly creak or rattle or shake over corners, over bumps. It just feels very solid, and everything is direct. So the steering is hydraulic steering. This was the last generation of 911 with the hydraulic steering. So after that, they moved to the electromechanical, I think they call it, which is fine, but the hydraulic just feels that better. There's more communication through the wheel as a result. with this car, because it's got all of the sports options, Sport Plus, Sports Exhaust, PASM, I tend to run this car in sport mode with the PDK in auto and with the switchable sports exhaust open. I think it just sounds perfect. It holds the gears for just the right amount for the way I drive. I mean, some people might prefer Sport Plus, but I think on the roads, having it sort of rev all the way to the red line pretty much it just sounds a bit too over the top. I mean, this does a much better job in sport mode of having you in the sweet spot torque wise without it being like you're thrashing the engine. I think Sport Plus should really just be reserved in most cases for sort of a road with absolutely no traffic that's super smooth, or you're on a racetrack. But yeah, this car is just phenomenal behind the wheel. It feels quite svelte and narrow at the front, so you can put it exactly where you want to. You don't have to worry about oncoming cars coming towards you in the same way that you would do in the wider 991. It does feel a little bit more old school in how the dashboard's set up, but it still feels very high quality. Like all the plastics and things are sort of like a satin finish, so they don't reflect the sunlight or anything like that. In manual mode, these cars are great too, because you can not only use on this one, it's got the rocker switches, but you can also use the stick itself. So towards you to go down a gear and away from you to go up a gear. So that works really well. It's just a great car to sort of cruise around in. The cabin is quite light and airy. There's actually a lot of glass, and I think there's probably more light in here than a 991 without a sunroof. Obviously this car hasn't got a sunroof, so there is that added benefit of that 991. So if you do get a 991 and you get it with the sunroof, I think you'll really enjoy the extra sort of engagement with the outside world, because that black Alcantara roof is quite dark. It does sort of absorb the light quite a bit. But this car, I mean, one thing that's quite interesting about these 997 Gen 2s is that pretty much when I have people turn up who've never even sat in a 911, let alone driven one, I normally drive them out first, and I do a route, which is what I'm doing now, although hopefully not stuck behind traffic like I am now. I find that after they've got that familiarisation with being in the passenger seat, seeing that the car is a fast car, because I do want to show them that these cars can perform, that they don't just look fast, they do actually have the dynamics and the speed to sort of back it up. They then don't have the pressure of feeling like they have to drive fast, and it's actually quite nice when they get in the car and they're immediately at home and comfortable that this car isn't trying to kill them. And that's the great thing about these 911s, is they're not intimidating to drive. They look great, they handle great, and as a driver you just feel very confident behind the wheel, even when the weather conditions are not great, when it's like it might be chucking it down with rain. As long as you've got a decent set of tyres on it, it will be absolutely fine. Some people say, is the four-wheel drive better than the two-wheel drive? Slightly, I'd say, because you do actually have that extra security net of having two extra driven wheels. It directs about between 5 and 40% of torque to the front wheels, so it can help you out, particularly when the conditions are bad. But there's so much sort of natural grip from the rubber in those rear wheels, the two-wheel drive version, that in most conditions you're not going to notice the difference between the four-wheel drive and the two-wheel drive, and likewise the other way around. So the added weight and complexity of the four-wheel drive doesn't hamper it either, so you don't notice it being slightly at a disadvantage. Possibly on the racetrack you would, but most of the people who want to buy these cars aren't looking to go on the racetrack, they're looking to enjoy it on the road. And I'd say go with whatever you want to buy, 2 or 4-wheel drive. But if you find a car that isn't, say you're looking for a 2-wheel drive and you find the ultimate 4-wheel drive for you in terms of its spec, colour and everything else, don't discount it just because it's got the wrong number of driven wheels, because you will still have the same amount of fun in it. Now, in terms of how I love 997 Gen 2s. I was blown away by 991s in how they feel ever so slightly more alive immediately. With this car, it's more of a slow burner. You sort of have to get to know it to really understand how to drive it fast and effectively. Not that you can't drive it, like I said, you can drive it as a complete newbie, but when you have that extra sort of familiarity, you can push it that extra bit more. So it's one that you sort of that grows with you and grows with your experience, and that's how I think the 997 sort of surpasses the 991 in that sort of added layer of complexity. You have to work a bit harder to get it to drive fast and drive it well. So it gives you more of a full experience. But my favourite part about the 997s is they're sort of like, they still look very similar to the 993s, which I also love, the last of the air-cooled cars. I think the sort of dimensions, proportions and everything are, yes, it's slightly bigger, but it still looks classic, whereas the 991 most definitely does look a new generation of, well, introducing the new modern era of 911s. That's where the 991 came in. And so even if you are considering both, it is a case of which camp do you sit in. And for me, I think as a long-term ownership prospect, I'd rather have a 997 Gen 2. If I was doing more miles on the road, I would probably have a 991. So that's where I'm going to leave this bit of the driving, and now I'm going to hop into the 991. So I'm here in the 991 Generation 1 Carrera 4S, which is a 3.8 400 horsepower supercar. It will do 60 in 3.9 seconds with the PDK box and the Sport Chrono Package Plus in Sport Plus, and also the launch control mode, which I've never used on these cars. Now, in terms of modes, when I'm driving one of these cars, on the road I prefer to use the sport mode, unless I'm on a particularly long journey, needs to save fuel or something. I guess you'd run it in sort of like normal mode. On roads like this, which is quite a narrow B road, I don't have the PASM switched on because I think it makes it too bobby. It sort of bobs up and down quite a lot. But immediately after getting into this car, after driving the 997, you feel that this is a bigger, more sort of dynamically honed car, but it does feel a little bit more cumbersome in narrow, restricted roads like these. The other big added benefit of this car, which I absolutely love, and talk about this, actually comparing this to a Targa, is the glass panoramic roof, which was available I think from 2013 onwards. This is a 2014 car. It's covered just 29,000 miles, and it is, yeah, as you've seen in the bits in my premises, it's very, very well specced. So at the moment I've got it in sport with the exhaust open, and when you press sport it disables the start-stop automatically, which is good. Start-stop isn't really that effective, I don't think, and it's because if you've got anything running like the air conditioning, the heated seats, the headlights, anything like that, it drains the battery very quick and it just sort of disables it anyway. It just unnecessarily puts strain on the battery, in my opinion, but there you go, it saves a bit on the tax. So now I've actually got the electric blind closed, so I'll open that up and you'll see that hopefully there'll be a little bit more light coming in to the cabin. And then you can have it set on a tilt function, so just the back edge is open, and it doesn't really it lets a bit more air in, but it doesn't really create any sort of like wind noise, which is great. Actually, it's a really nice feature, and obviously that's a feature that's been around on sunroofs pretty much since they were around back in the 60s, I guess. But then if I go to open up the whole thing, it now brings in more of the exhaust noise, a little bit more wind comes in, a little bit of gusting, but not a huge amount. You just feel it in the top of your head a little bit, but it's not obtrusive. I've got the windows shut and it's not buffeting, although I haven't gone at a super high speed. I mean, these 991s are, I think they're, let me just turn the exhaust off because I've got a horse rider, and this is quite a loud car, so I'm just going to go past them, creep past them really slowly. You do have to notice, you do have to really be sympathetic of horse owners and things. When you've got a loud car like this, you have to be very on the ball and not sort of turn up with them with the exhaust spitting and cackling. Right, so here I am on a better beat road now, so I can open it up. It's just so smooth in how it delivers the power. It doesn't ever feel overwhelmed. I would say, actually, I mean, I did the last review of this era of car against the 997 Gen 2 in a Carrera S. This feels that little bit more stable, and I'm not sure whether it's a combination of the fact that it's got the four-wheel drive, and also it's got the uprated sport suspension package for the PASM equipped cars. So it's still got the switchable suspension, but it sits 10mm lower than a normal PASM car, which the other Carrera S was. This car doesn't have PDCC, which is Porsche Dynamic Chassis Control. It's just got the standard chassis control system, and it doesn't have. It has PTV Plus, Porsche Torque Vectoring Plus, so it uses the electronic diffs to sort of keep the car going in the direction you want to. There is two options for steering, so there was basically like a Power Steering Plus or Servotronic Plus. I can't remember the exact name, but this has got the standard one, which is still electric steering, but it still has lots of feel. I'd say it doesn't feel quite as natural as the hydraulic steering in the 997 Gen 2 that I've just driven, but it's still very, very good. It feels slightly light, I'd say, compared to the hydraulic system. But you do get used to it. It's just comparing light with light, you're going to notice the differences. But you can quite easily cruise at up to 60 miles an hour in this car on a road like this, which is windy. You can't really see too far ahead. You know that there's security of the brakes, but it just drives phenomenally. And the sound is glorious. Absolutely glorious, and you can see there's not too much wind disturbance. The gearbox in sport mode, I think, is the best compromise of holding gears, but also not sort of thrashing it all the way to the red line. This car's amazing. So I did the PWIS3 diagnostics on it. It's only got 11 single ignitions in range 1. Range 1 you get literally from hitting the red line going slightly downhill, even just a slight gradient, it will hit range 1. So this car has been super looked after by its previous owners, and it's had a few. I mean, it's got 5 previous owners, so 2014, it's all in fantastic condition, and also engine wise and engine log wise, it's all fine. So I'm really pleased with that this car is such a good example, with great spec, low miles. I've just had it MOT'd, it's just sailed through, no advisories. The MOT station loved it. Yeah, so very happy with this car. And if I wanted to summarise the difference between the 997 Gen 2 and this, is there was an absolute step change in what Porsche did with the Porsche 911 image and design and how it's used on the road. This car was definitely sort of a step to it being a more capable GT car, a car that's capable of competing with the likes of McLaren, with Aston Martin in terms of their road presence, not only as the driver behind the wheel with sort of like an ergonomic dashboard with all the latest tech, but also with how it looks on the road. I think it looks more imposing than the 997 Gen 2. So I'd say that's the things that sort of are the positives for the 991, is that it feels like a more rounded, more capable GT, and it's got the performance of a supercar in my mind. The 997 Gen 2 still feels old school, but that's not a bad thing, because you feel more through the steering wheel, more through the seat. It feels nimbler, smaller. Yes, it will not do 0 to 60 in 3.9, but it's still got a very responsive 385 horsepower on tap. The PDK box works not quite as well, but it's still, the software in it isn't quite as sort of intuitive, but it's still incredibly good. So yeah, it's very much, as I summarised in the last version of this video, you're into one of two camps when you're looking at these cars. Either you want the old style looks with the modern tech and modern performance, or you want the bang up to date best of Porsche. And for me, that's what this is. The 991 Gen 1 is the best of the modern Porsche, because it's got the naturally aspirated engine still. It didn't go to the 3-litre turbo, twin turbo, which is what the later cars had. It's still got all the modern tech. Okay, it hasn't got CarPlay, but you can live without that when you've got a car that sounds as good as this. I would say try and get one with a panoramic roof, because it really does add to the experience. And that's where I'd like to end it, really. It's they're both phenomenal cars to drive and own. I know a lot of people consider one or the other, and I think you have to really try them both out and see which camp you sit in. Whether you sit in the historically sympathetic 997 Gen 2, or you want to sit in the new era of 911, but still with the best of the naturally aspirated world, which is these Carrera S's and Carrera 4S's. So I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching.